Hey guys, what's going on? It's your After Game Reviews here. This is going to be a tips video for Company of Heroes 2 Spearhead mod. Now, I play this. This is pretty much the mod that I play when I play Company of Heroes 2. It is such a well-made mod. It's really adds some, I guess, like spruce to the game or something like that. It's just great. It's just a lot of fun. And also now, please comment below if you disagree with me or if you think I could be doing something different, because I don't know everything. This is just my recommendations. So if you do disagree, please let me know below, and how you would do things, or just on the video in general. I really would appreciate that. And remember to like and subscribe so you can get updates on all the new content. So let us begin. Okay, so the first thing I would say, which I do pretty much all the time, is I am a very aggressive. You guys have heard me say it in pretty much all of my videos almost, but it's just be aggressive. So I pick first of all, pick the commander that works best for you. Now, I know a lot of the times people will say, oh no, you got to pick the one, you got to work with your teammate, and your teammates, and you don't want to pick the same one they do. And that's true. You don't want to always have the same one that they, or this, you just don't want to have multiples of the same one, because it can just get very, I don't know, kind of redundant and whatnot. But at the same time, you want to do the best you can do, and if the best you can do is like the same one as someone else, then I would definitely pick that. There have been times when I've chosen Ranger Company, and then the other two people had Ranger Company, and it was just like, well, why'd you pick that? But then, we won the game. It's just, you really have to pick the commander that works best for you. So I usually do pick Ranger Company if I'm the USA, because I don't know, I just like the balance it has. It gives you really good infantry, the Rangers, and then also the Easy 8 Sherman tank. So that's my first tip. Also, like I said, just you got to be aggressive. This is going to be the underlying point for this video, is you just have to literally, like, this mod allows you to sprint. You literally need your infantry to sprint. You literally need to tell them to sprint as best you can. Just try to remember that when they are going to a place, just tell them to sprint, because if they can get there before the enemy, then you're in a good position. See, right here, they were going to build a bunker there, and once that MG42 bunker got up, nobody was going to be able to take these 2 points, not a single one. And that goes the same for anything. We're not playing victory point here, we're just playing a regular annihilation match, 1v1. So it's just keep in mind that you have to be aggressive. I've played with so many people so many times, whether they be on my own team or the enemy, and they lose the match, or we lose the match, because we're just not as aggressive. We just let the enemy, I don't know, just steamroll us because they're very aggressive. So just keep that in mind. It's really important to be aggressive. I feel like I can't stress that enough, to be honest. Okay, so the next point I want to talk about is AT guns. Now, keep in mind the Spearhead mod, I probably should have done this at the beginning. For those of you who don't know what the Spearhead mod does, it pretty much just makes it more realistic. It's not the realism mod. The realism mod, as I said in my review, it literally makes the units like, or men anyway, like paper mache. So I'm talking about, like, you can send 50 men in. I've seen it, like 50 men in to, like, down a street corner, and if there's an MG42, you'll lose like 25 of them just by snapping your finger. I'm not kidding. Some people really like it. I think it's fun, but I like a balance between, I don't know. This is real enough for me. Also, like the tanks in that game, if the Germans get their armor, you're pretty much finished. You would need to really, I guess, coordinate and just send a mass wave of, your Shermans or your Comets or Fireflies, whatever tanks you have, to destroy German armor. So just something to keep in mind. But anyway, yeah, Spearhead kind of finds a middle ground, and it makes it more realistic, while at the same time retaining that really fun gameplay. So something I want to touch on is these AT guns. Now, I don't know if it's just bad luck, but and this is going to sound like, well, duh, but you need to place these at strategic points, and you always need to have some sort of infantry with them, because they will just get torn up by infantry. They're great against tanks, obviously, but I mean, if they get flanked, or even if they have like a machine gun crew. So let's say that an MG42 team, let's see, sets up like right there, so still in their line of fire, it will tear them up. You might take out one or two guys, or maybe even with a lucky shot you could destroy it, but I rarely ever see that. So if it's infantry against this AT gun, you can say goodbye to the AT gun. So you really need to make sure you have some infantry support with it. Another point I can't stress enough is to commandeer buildings. You really, like, this map is really perfect for this, because it has this really big church right in the middle of the map. So I mean, right when I got in this church, your area of view really just expands, and as you can see, it is pretty realistic. There's nobody looking on that side right now, so it looks, or like more up in this corner, I guess I should say. So the fog of war is still pretty heavy right there, but over here you can see a lot farther. But yeah, you really want to keep your men in buildings, because Spearhead does take into account of realism. I mean, as you can see, that the church is really banged up. It's because a tank was just smashing at this church earlier, and these men were losing health, and they lost a few guys, but I did keep a medic right out here, so I luckily brought up an AT gun and a Stewart and was able to take it out. But my point is that if they weren't in there and they were just, say, right next to the church, the tank really would have probably wiped them out, and I would have had to retreat them back to HQ. So you really want to use the buildings to your advantage. I know that goes without saying for vanilla and whatnot, but in Spearhead, where realism counts and whatnot, you really just want to keep that in mind and take advantage of it, because the AI will do it too, and of course human players will do it as well. Another aspect that I really like that Spearhead puts in is medics. Now they put in for every faction. So it used to be, let me think here. For Company of Heroes 1, I believe, you could send up a half track, and you can still do that for a lot of the factions. You can send up a half track that can reinforce your men. And for the Americans, I believe you even get an ambulance. Now, I didn't realize this. I only started doing this a few weeks ago, but the medics that you're allowed to get the first time pretty much do everything that a ambulance can do, and they also don't cost as much. All they cost are 25 manpower. So I would definitely recommend getting them somewhere near the beginning, because you can set up an aid station, and I mean, if you have a major there that can set up, or the major can't do it. I wonder, might be the lieutenant. Or let's say you set up a forward assembly or forward headquarters. If you set it up right near the med station and set it as a retreat point, that really saves your men time, because you can just tell them to retreat. They'll go to the aid station, which is, near the forward headquarters, and you can heal them there. So really, it's just really beneficial. And even if you don't retreat them and you're just lucky enough to get your men out of whatever situation they're in, send them to your medic station and just reinforce them there, and then you can just send them right out to the battle. So I'm really glad that Spearhead put medics into this game. It's really beneficial. I would highly recommend getting medics right off the bat. They're really not that expensive, as opposed to, let's say, the ambulance is 150. It's also 10 fuel, and as you know, fuel is extremely valuable. And also, I just noticed, I just get so sick and tired of ambulances always getting destroyed. I don't know what it is. Ambulances seem to be a target more than regular medics are. The combat medics don't seem to get hit. Like, I've had firefights where I've had tons of infantry and tanks around them, and they will just be getting blasted. And the medics don't necessarily die from let's say like MG42s or gunners. They die from stray artillery fire or something like that. So remember to get the medics, especially for this mod. They really do help out. Another thing you want to remember is to use, so unlike realism, or I haven't played vanilla in a while. This may go well for vanilla too, but you really want to coordinate your tanks together, your artillery together. So what you're going to want to do is just make sure your tanks are together. And they also did this, now for realism, like I was saying, they make your tanks like they're paper mache. Now your tanks can still die in one shot in this mod, but it really does depend where they're hit. Your tanks also do feel like they have a bit of power to them as well. Now, of course, I'm fighting against infantry right now. That's more of a balancing thing, feature. Infantry can't really, or infantry can kind of get away without a scratch sometimes against artillery. I mean, you can luckily get them to run away most of the time, but what you really want to watch out for are other tanks. So the way you can do that is by keeping your tanks together. Usually you might lose one, and I'm talking about allies here. If you can get a like Tiger or like some like King Tiger or something like that, if you're the Germans, then you definitely are in good hands, because if you can get 2 of those, you should be safe. But if you're like the allies who don't have as strong of armor, you're going to want to keep your tanks together. And then Spearhead does take into account the realism. So let's say if you have 2 Shermans against a Tiger, if you can quickly kind of maneuver, because you really need to use the Sherman's speed to your advantage. If you can maneuver around them and get a few good shots on the side or the back, or maybe even the front if you're lucky, it really just depends sometimes, then you should be in good hands. I usually try to stick to 3 Shermans to stay together at all times, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Also, you can work with the allied, see, like right there, that was awesome. You can also work with allied tanks. So of course this is AI, but it goes without saying it works for it's even better if you're playing online with humans as well. Okay, something else you're going to want to do, which I don't see people do a lot, is you're going to want to keep your infantry with your artillery and your tanks with your infantry. It is kind of like common sense. Of course you're going to want to do that, but I mean, people really don't do that, and they suffer for it. They start losing men or tanks too, because like I said before, it's not like infantry is, it's gonna sound weird, but infantry is kind of like the bane of tanks. I mean, your tanks will not last long against, if they're just fighting infantry, because I'm telling you, in that wave of infantry, there's bound to be like a bazooka squad or a Panzerschreck squad or something like that. So it's something you want to keep in mind. Another thing which is really important, which I definitely don't see people do a lot, but it can really make a difference, is keep an officer with your infantry and units overall, because lieutenant can work with your troops, and same goes with the major. You can also bring your major along to the battle. Obviously your major can't really do a lot because he's only got like 3 men and they don't really have a lot, but he can call an artillery strike, so that's nice. But your lieutenant with your units can kind of raise their rate of fire and their morale and all that good stuff, so really keep that in mind, and it's always nice to have an officer with them. Like I said, keep a medic up with your units so it can heal them. And I mean, literally, it saves you so much time. You don't have to go all the way back to your base and then have that potential to lose any points that you may have captured or been defending. And then, I mean, if you really keep your infantry and tanks together, you can slowly make a move up. Nothing can really hold you back. There have been those times, especially when you're playing against people, where very well timed artillery strikes can do it. So something to keep in mind. Now, one of the biggest things that I have trouble with still is engineers. So the biggest issue, which I think why people either forget or don't always do this, is in terms of keeping infantry and tanks together, is they don't always have engineers with them nearby. It's because when their tanks get damaged, they're like, well crap, we can't heal them. So then what do? Well, they jump out of their tanks and they usually end up dying if they don't get them taking them back to the line, into the rear of their line to repair them. So it's really important to have engineers up there with you on standby, so you can just kind of keep your tanks there if they win the gunfight. If you know you're not going to win this gunfight and you just need to get out of there as quick as you can, then definitely do that. It's really it doesn't really make sense to keep multiple, or I'm sorry, it doesn't really make sense to keep them out there if you know that they're going to get destroyed. Okay, something else that you're going to want to do, or I guess I should say not do, and this is something I'm still really guilty of, but I try my hardest not to do. It's just so difficult, I don't know, because if you're in the heat of battle, but you really don't want to bunch up your infantry. So this right now is an okay situation, but it's really not, depending on the size of the artillery strike. You have those Sturm Tigers, or I don't know if I'm saying that right. They look kind of like, they only have that one huge barrel, and it just kind of aims up, and they just shoot a huge shot at you and shell at you, and it just decimates you. That happened in one of my latest videos. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a link to that at the end of the video. It's just crazy what it can do. And if you have infantry and even artillery bunched up like that, you can say like goodbye to all of them, because that is just not happening. They will just be destroyed. So you want to really spread your infantry out, so that if you do get an artillery shell or something like that, then you won't really lose too much, and you'll be able to recover. But there have been times where I've seen it's all just bunched up. You got to kind of spread it out a little bit, spread your attack out, because I've seen it when we've been bunched up, and it's just horrible. I mean, you lose all effectiveness to charge or anything like that, or to do whatever it is you were just doing. So like right here, I mean, I'm kind of still doing it as I'm telling you. I really try not to. It's really risky though, because you know, if you do separate your troops, then of course they might not be as effective as if they were in a whole unit, but it's really worth it. I mean, usually those like one-time blows don't happen too often. So if you can time it well, then you know, maybe you'll be able to bring your men back together, and then you know, keep pushing on. But it's just remember to keep your men not all clumped up together, because it will really be bad for them and for you, and it will really just kind of cripple your offensive. So that's really all I can think of right now. Just remember to keep being aggressive. I know I see a lot of people set up a strong defense, which is, yes, it's always important to set up a strong defense right away, but you really need to keep moving. Just keep pushing your men forward. I know there are some exceptions where there's just not going to be any movement because both sides are just too dug in, and those situations are so cool. I mean, they really are. It just kind of is like a trench warfare type deal. But my point is just keep moving. You've got to be aggressive. Just remember, be aggressive. Be aggressive. Yeah, I just said that. So just remember to do that. Remember to use the buildings to your advantage. They really do help and increase your line of sight. And remember, Spearhead really does focus on realism, honestly. So if you're going up like against one tank against another, let's say a German tank like a Tiger, I would really not recommend it, because I just cannot foresee your Sherman, or any allied tank for that matter, surviving against a Sherman, or I'm sorry, a Tiger. So yeah, just remember to capture the points as best you can. For a victory point, I can give a little bit of advice. Just capture the point, defend it, and then slowly inch your way up. I am also very guilty of this, but I really try not to be. You really have to have a good team with you, a good alliance that can work with you, or that you can work with them, that you all just work well together. You just want to be able to hold a point and then just keep moving up. So it's something to keep in mind about. Well, alright everyone, I think that wraps up this tip video. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments down below, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. So I will see you next time on Year After Game Reviews.